While we were walking around in New York, I was walking down a street with my wife. We're just walking around, and the streets of New York, not the cleanest place in the world. There's litter and stuff everywhere. Obviously, depending on where you are, some areas are better than others. Sometimes a day better than others. Anyway, we walk down this one street, and I see a whole bunch of white pieces of paper all over the place. And I'm a curious sort, so I picked one up, and I wound up bringing it home with me because there were hundreds of these. I folded it up, so it wasn't normally folded, but there were hundreds of these laying around in the street. And this is some of the craziest shit I've ever seen in my life. I wanted to just kind of talk about this because, guys, there are some seriously mentally ill people out there. I'm going to read it to you. And this guy has a Twitter that you can go check out, I guess. I'll share it with you. Why not? Yeah, let me read this to you. So it starts off at the top. It's got a little date. It says 6/12/18. CIA torture - persecution! Exclamation point. Gives us Twitter and Facebook. Says they are repeatedly hacked. All my means of communication remain fully controlled by the spies. Some might be getting out. Most of it seems is not. I am forced to use this method to reach as many people as possible with one action. The CIA is aggressively harassing me wherever I am, sometimes with violence. I am disabled due to an accident that caused second and third degree burns on 40% of my body. The CIA attempts to frame me with individuals timing my entrance and exit from every place I go. The CIA employs in the street and at home a harassment technique developed at Abu Ghraib in the documentary Standard Operating Procedure. He gives a time stamp on there, 47 minutes in. The CIA deploys daily potent chemicals into my residence. In some areas I visit, it also uses an electronic device that creates a field engulfing my home and applies to me potent electroshocks to break my sleep in small sections. Some cause me to vomit or pain. After 9/16/16, there was a reduction in the number of NYPD participating in the harassment. In many occasions, it returns to the previous level. All this part is underlined. The surveillance at the street where I live remains very poor, especially at crucial moments. There is no continuous surveillance or street cams, no sensors to detect the electric bursts and toxins daily employed at my apartment, many times in massive quantities. This agency has spies everywhere. He claims 1 out of every 15 people. They'll discredit me from the start. This network is in every country. I carry with me evidence supporting most of my assertions. I've gone to the U.S. Congress 11 times. The 12th letter was faxed to Congress, still no answer. He gives his street address, which I will not repeat here. This street is controlled by the CIA agencies. Concealed cameras at my home provide information about my movements in it, directing agents' actions to provoke me or portray me in a bad light. These agents can be of any look, and he gives his name. I'm debating whether I will share his name with you. On the back here, it lists dates of all the times that he's reached out to different countries' consulates. Let's see, he lists China, Russia, Kazakhstan, Venezuela, China. I already listed China, I guess on a different time. Russia, Cuba, Kyrgyzstan, and United Nations Plaza. CIA spies working at those representations were expecting me, hence I was sent packing. Similar fate of the Venezuelan consulate, Belarus consulate, Ecuador, Bolivia, Nicaragua. The least guarded hours at my home are from 7 to 2 p.m. The spies have been placing numerous agents in every institution or corporation in the press, the FDNY and NYPD for decades, using frames of all sorts, but especially of a sexual nature, to eliminate those they do not want. All intelligence organizations, private or public, are just one, controlled by Nazis. So he's claiming that all intelligence organizations are actually just one organization and is run by Nazis. Using a system of profiling that can be done as soon as we are a few months old. They detect those more suitable for espionage. One important element is the selection of those with low empathy. This is the network of the infirm, whatever that means. The proportion of spies is higher in the health sector. Normally, after the distribution of this flyer, very high-profile events happen. So, I did kind of follow up on this because I was just fascinated. And when you go to his Twitter account, first of all, the dude is posting constantly. Like, as I was on his account for about 5 minutes, he posted 3 times. And most of his posts are, he's got webcams out his window at his apartment in New York, webcams of people walking by and of cars parked outside his apartment. There's a neighbor of his, I kind of scroll down a little bit, there's a neighbor of his, it's clearly somebody that lives in his building or something, that goes outside to smoke. This is not an uncommon thing for a human being to do, but he records this guy. Every time he goes out to smoke, he records this guy and puts it up on his Twitter page because he's convinced this guy is a spy. He's got complaints on there about how like children walking by on skateboards or bouncing balls are actually sent by spy networks to torture him with noise. Every time a neighbor's stereo plays loud enough for him to hear, he claims that it's the spies trying to harass him. This is a very sick individual. And I can tell you, the more I have become exposed to the general population with the YouTube channel, as anybody who wants to look through my comments will be able to see, there's a certain percentage of people out there in the world that are just crazy. Just crazy. And I had this weird fascination with people like this, this is clearly a shut-in. This is a guy who just lives in his apartment and is convinced that everybody in the world is part of a giant conspiracy against him and is working against him. He's convinced that every intelligence network on Earth is conspiring against him, and they're all Nazis, of course. And this made me think, and this delivery method of his to get this out there, it made me think of, honestly, one of my favorite documentaries. You can find it on YouTube, and I'll put the link in the description of this. I highly recommend anybody check it out because I loved this movie. I've seen it multiple times. It's called Resurrect Dead, The Mystery of the Toynbee Tiles. And normally I wouldn't put a link to a YouTube video because usually those things are stolen. And honestly, I don't know if this is owned by the guy who made it or not. But honestly, there's no other place to find it. I don't know what happened to this movie. It was on Netflix for a while, and then it went away, and you can't even find it on Amazon, I don't think. Like, I was looking for it somewhere, and the only place I could find it was on YouTube, so there you go. But it's a fascinating movie. It's one of the best, like, mystery documentaries that I've seen in it, and it's basically about this guy who put these tiles down. I want to say it was in Philadelphia. No, Baltimore. Baltimore or Philadelphia. I forget. Anyway. And they were called the Toynbee tiles. And all the tiles said, Toynbee idea, I may be getting this slightly wrong, but Toynbee idea, resurrect dead Toynbee idea in the movie 2001, resurrect dead on planet Jupiter. And they all had the same kind of design, and they were like this sort of plastic thing, and they were like stuck with asphalt to the street, like in the middle of the street, so that you would be like walking across a crosswalk and see this thing, and like, what the hell was that? You know? Excuse me. But the movie is fascinating. It's about this group of guys that are all sort of obsessed with figuring out what this is all about, who's doing this, what's the mystery behind it. They talk about, there was a writer named Toynbee, I can't remember his first name, but he had some book where he talked about resurrecting dead molecules on the planet Jupiter. I think it was all just kind of like a sci-fi concept, but I guess some people, for whatever reason, took it seriously, or this particular person. But it was the same kind of idea. It was they figure out who the person is in the movie, and it's this total shut-in. They like talk to the people who live in the building around him, and they're all like, no, he's a super nice guy, but he's like totally, he's got like, you know, tinfoil on the windows. He thinks there's a vast conspiracy against him. And in some of the tiles, he talked about how like there was this huge conspiracy against him. This just really made me think of that, because it's the same kind of idea. It's like here's a person who's like completely shut in. They feel like the whole world is against them, and their only way of getting their word out is this, desperate plea for attention like this, and with this guy on his Twitter feed. And it's just fascinating. It's fascinating how far the human mind can just deteriorate into this puddle of conspiracy and paranoia. And the funny thing is, as somebody who works from my home, I'll be honest, I start to feel like I get a little weird sometimes. I start to feel like I start to do things. I don't need to go into specifics here, but I start to do things that I feel like I don't think normal people do this. I don't think that if I was at an office, I would be doing this, but I do it here, and I think it's just when you are just not around people very often, you kind of retreat into really weird places in your head. And when you're somebody that does kind of just completely shut yourself in to your home, I mean, this guy's whole world is his apartment. And he's convinced that everybody who parks outside his apartment, everybody who stands out there and smokes a cigarette is spying on him because like this is his whole world, you know? I guess the moral of the story is you gotta understand that your brain is full of shit, and your brain is gonna do stuff, make you think things that are not true. Your brain is gonna mess with you, and you have to remain cognizant of these thoughts that you have. You know, you could just call it mindfulness. That's basically what it all comes down to. But being mindful of what's going on in your head and of your thoughts, and I really feel like as we get older, all the little idiosyncrasies we have when we're younger just kind of get bigger and bigger. I've seen that in my parents' generation. Little things that once upon a time were just kind of cute idiosyncrasies are now like debilitating mental stuff, you know, and it can get the best of you. And you just kind of have to be mindful of that stuff. I like to think that I am, but I feel like that's something I should talk about more, either here or on my main channel. Sorry, I'm burping in the microphone. Is mindfulness and just keeping in mind that, again, your brain is a bullshitter. Your brain will steer you wrong in every chance it gets. It is not a logic machine. It is an emotion machine, and it falls into feedback loops that just repeat over and over again things that satisfy that egoic mind that tells you that the world is the way it is. And if you don't fight against it, and if you don't get a handle on it, it will get a handle on you. And it will mess you up hard. Exhibit A. Anyway, I found that fascinating. Just wanted to share it with you. I hope you guys are doing well. Get out of your house. Go talk to somebody. And I'll catch you next time.